what I think is going to happen once this sector really catches on fire and put gold there instead. And so I think the investment demand is going to grow dramatically over time for gold.
What happens when the world's central banks lose faith in the US dollar? Peter Schiff says, it's already happening. Trillions are quietly moving behind the scenes. And guess what they're buying instead? It's not stocks. It's not crypto. It's gold. If you're not paying attention, you'll miss the biggest shift in monetary power in our lifetime. Here's what Peter just revealed.
I mean, I think the biggest driver for gold really has been central banks understanding that the dollar's days as the reserve currency are numbered. I mean, nobody knows exactly how large that number is, but they know that it's getting smaller every day. And central banks need to replace dollars with another monetary reserve. And the best choice is gold. And that's what's happening. You're seeing central banks accumulating more gold. They still own a very small percentage of total reserves in gold. And so they have a lot of currency reserves to divest, predominantly US dollars. I think it's mostly US dollars that central banks want to get off their books and replace with gold. And but I think eventually investors, both in retail and institutional, are going to figure out what's going on, and they're going to want to do the same thing. They're going to want to replace some of the bonds or fixed income that they have in their portfolio and put gold there instead. And so I think the investment demand is going to grow dramatically over time for gold. And I think central bank demand is going to continue to grow. And so the price, I think, has really no place to go but up. Doesn't mean it can't, go down along an upward trajectory. Like, we pulled back. We almost got to 3,500 a week and a half ago, and now we're almost down to 3,200. But I mean, if you look at where we were a year ago, today we were, maybe 2,200. So we've moved up, $1,000. So gold is clearly moving up, and it's not just because of the trade war. I mean, it was moving up before the trade war.
Trump, in a throwaway comment, said he wished he could back the dollar against gold again. It just seems like something that's probably we're too far down the track now for that to ever really become reality. Or
Well, I mean, we could back the dollar by gold, but we'd have to raise the price of gold, the official price of gold, quite a bit in order to do that. But then in order to maintain that backing, we'd have to stop all the deficit spending, which Trump doesn't want to do. I mean, Trump is one of the main reasons that Congress is going to pass this big, beautiful bill, which is actually quite ugly, and it's going to contain massive increases in deficit spending and a $5 trillion increase in the debt ceiling. We couldn't do that if the dollar was backed by gold, which is why it's not backed by gold, because politicians don't want to be disciplined. They were disciplined when we had gold backing, which is why our economy was much better under a gold standard than it is now. But now the government just can get away with murder. And so Trump could talk about it, but actions speak louder than words. He's not acting like somebody that wants to be on a gold standard. He's acting like a big spending liberal, or Democrat, Keynesian that's, wants to prime the pump with inflation and government spending. And, gold prevents that from happening. I don't like the idea that the U.S. government gets in there and tries to, become a middleman or something. It's obviously going to make it less efficient and more prone to, graft and corruption. But yeah, I mean, I haven't looked at all the terms, but yeah, I mean, generally what happens, governments don't develop their own resources. When they do a lousy job. Generally what a country does is they will license through some kind of, mining rights or a particular area to a private company. And that company will pay some override, a royalty to the government for that concession. And so the government doesn't do anything. It allows a private profit-seeking company to efficiently, mine the resources. So that's what I'm sure Ukraine. I mean, when you try to do it, when the government tries to go in and operate the business, it does a lousy job. It's very inefficient, and so they don't end up with a lot of output from from the government-owned mines. You need private sector efficiencies and profit mode. Yeah, I mean, I think that we're going to have um, a re-rating, and then I don't, the market isn't going to just crush these stocks. Like, look at Alamos Gold's earnings came out today. They were on the low end of estimates, but they mentioned that with the recent big drop in production costs with oil prices crashing, and they're expecting to increase their production, and gold prices are much higher now than they were last quarter, that even though they're at the low end of this quarter, they're still likely to meet their full year guidance and probably going to beat it. But at one point today, the stock was down 18%. I mean, now it's down 10%, but even that is a lot. I mean, it wasn't like a horrible earnings report. It was still earnings growth, but the market, the stock is now trading at where it was when gold was 2,800 a couple of months ago. So why should the stock lose, all the gains from 2,800 to 3,200 and change, $400 extra? Because it's ridiculous that the market reacts so badly to a miss. I mean, they actually finally, shares a New Gold were up almost 20% yesterday. They had a beat. It wasn't even that big. So that was like the first time in a while I've seen a gold stock actually go way up when it beat earnings, because there's been plenty of them that have been beating earnings and the stocks have barely benefited. I mean, look how little Newmont went up. It had a very substantial beat. And the stock was barely up. And of course, now it's way below where it was when it beat those earnings. But because people still don't believe in the sector. The skepticism is off the charts. My guess is that most people think that gold's going to go back down, to 1,500. They never expected it to get to 3,000. They thought 2,000 was the top. So they have no idea why gold is going up. They just assume it's a fluke. And I've heard now people call the gold as like a meme coin. Like, yeah, I mean, like it's, people just gambling on it when they're not gambling on it. Nobody is gambling on it. That's the point. People are gambling someplace else. They're not gambling in gold. The central banks, when they buy gold, they're not rolling the dice. They're buying it for a legitimate purpose. They know why they're buying it, and they're not going to stop.
Yeah, I just get the impression now that gold is up above 3,000, a lot of people think gold's expensive and they don't really see as much of the upside on the retail side anyway. That's sort of a perception I'm
they
having.
thought the same thing at 2,000.
Well, exactly. Yeah,
the major like the investment houses were downgrading, Newmont and Barrick when gold was at 2,000, because they were saying there's no more upside in gold. They said gold is at the top; it can't go any higher. That was their thoughts, and and here we are, 50% higher. What I think is going to happen once this sector really catches on fire, and companies are getting a lot of investment flows. These companies, the big companies, right? They haven't really developed a lot of projects to replenish the reserves that they're now mining. Now, obviously, as the price of gold goes up, that unlocks some more expensive reserves and enables them to get more from the mines they have. But they're going to start looking forward 10 years, 15 years from now and think, okay, well, what are we going to do for earnings then? Right? We need to go out and develop some new mines. Well, the best way to do that is just to buy up some of these smaller companies that already have those projects in early stages of development, because they already know they're viable. They've been proven. They just need to be developed. And all that requires is money. Well, they have tons of money because they're making money like crazy, selling gold for whatever they're selling it. And so I think you're going to see a lot of consolidation in the industry. And I think like a lot of the small companies that we're buying and that we own in my gold fund, I think those companies will end up getting bought by these bigger companies that I also have in my fund. But they're going to buy these companies. So instead of selling them to other investors, we'll just sell them to gold mining companies, because that's the low-hanging fruit, right? Rather than trying to start from scratch, exploring for gold deposits, why not buy up the ones that you already know exist? Right. So that's going to happen. Again, if people want, my fund, you could buy it. EPGIX is the ticker symbol for the no load version. So people can get into the fund at any of the discount brokerage houses. Look for EPGIX, or you can go to my website at Europe Pacific Capital, europac.com, get information on the fund. And you can even buy the fund. If you don't have a brokerage account, you can buy it directly from us.
So if central banks are dumping dollars for gold, what does that mean for your money? Peter Schiff believes this is just the beginning, and those who ignore it may pay the ultimate price. Stay informed, stay ahead, and don't forget, gold never lies. Hit that like button if you get information, subscribe it now, and click on notification bell for more latest updates. Thank you.